Gospel of John, chapter 20. And Mary was standing outside the tomb crying, and as she wept, she stooped and looked in. She saw two white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" the angels asked. "Because they have taken away my Lord," she replied, "and I don't know where they have put him." She turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she did not recognize him. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" Jesus asked her. "Who are you looking for?" She thought he was the gardener. "Sir," she said, "if you have taken him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will go and get him." "Mary," said Jesus. She turned to him and cried out, "Rabboni," which is Hebrew for teacher. "Don't cling to me," Jesus said, for I haven't yet ascended to the Father. But go find my brothers and tell them I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." So Mary Magdalene found the disciples and told them, "I have seen the Lord." Then she gave them his message. The Gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So what you see up there is an empty tomb. And as you go through the hole and see the crosses, you can see how all of what the Passion Week and what today is kind of bringing together. But when I see this picture, I think of a new beginning, a brand new beginning that God has created through the resurrected Christ. So we've been watching The Chosen at Laura's house for quite a few months now, and some of you might have been seeing The Chosen. I know right now they've got Chosen out in the movies in 3-hour segments, but it's a wonderful depiction of the life of Christ and his ministry. And what I find fascinating is through the preaching and teaching and the healing of Jesus, all these people are experiencing new beginnings, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, physically, socially. He's coming into this world, and pretty much everything he does creates new beginnings in people's lives. Some more dramatic than others, but if they've been touched by him, they experience new beginnings in ways that they've never experienced before. And so when he's calling his disciples, every one of those kind of tough guys in their own way, and some women, you know, that he helped minister to, but these tough guys all experienced brand new beginnings in their life by just listening and being around Jesus. And I find that to be fascinating. There has never existed another human being on the face of this earth that created so much new beginnings in people's lives, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, mentally, physically, in all the dynamics of people's lives. And so, again, in the Gospel of John, especially, there's a lot of new beginnings. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about Nicodemus. Now, this was a hardcore Pharisee, man. This guy was steeped in religiosity to the max. And he was well-known and educated and had lots of money and all the fanfare, but Jesus touched his heart. And you know Nicodemus. Nicodemus experienced a brand new beginning that just blew him away. And then, of course, that's in John 3, you know, where they have John 3:16. That's Nicodemus' story. Then you go a few more chapters in the Gospel of John, and you come to John 11, where Jesus is out in the countryside doing his preaching and teaching, and he's quite a few miles away from Jerusalem. And all of a sudden, a couple of servants from some good friends of his, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, approach him out of nowhere and let Jesus know that his good friend Lazarus is dying. And apparently Jesus and Martha, Lazarus, and Mary were good friends, almost like brothers and sisters. And Lazarus and his two sisters lived in a small town just on the outskirts of Jerusalem called Bethany. And of course, back in those days, you couldn't just jump into a car or, or a train or a plane and get to your destination. So Jesus had to walk. And by the time he got to Bethany, unfortunately, his good friend Lazarus was already deceased and in the tomb. And so when he's on the outskirts of Bethany, he's coming in, Martha, being the type of person she was, kind of confronted Jesus. She says, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Okay. But Jesus didn't take offense. He knew where she was coming from. And he basically says to her, "Martha, I know you've seen me do miraculous healings with the power the Father has given me, but I'm going to show you something even better. I'm going to show you that I have power over death itself. Do you believe that I am the resurrection and the life? And that I have this power?" And of course Martha says, "Yes, I do believe that you are the resurrection and the life." And in the Gospel of John, that's the first time that Jesus refers to himself as the resurrection. I am the resurrection. And now we've been using that word for almost 2,000 years. Every funeral that I do, I use that word. That word was used by Ray at Greg's funeral. The resurrection. A new beginning beyond this world. So what Jesus was doing was introducing Martha to a brand new scope of new beginnings that goes even beyond death. I mean, think about that. And of course, at the end of the story, he raises Lazarus out of the tomb to show that he has power over death. And then you get to this story that I just read in John 20, which is a marvelous depiction of the resurrection and the empty tomb. You've got Mary. Now Mary, talk about a new beginning. I mean, she was a prostitute, she was an alcoholic or whatever, She was doing everything that she wasn't supposed to be doing until when? She encountered Jesus. And she experienced a brand new beginning that just changed her life forever. Well, she had a few slips in there, but she was a changed person. And now what you see is that same Mary going to the tomb and seeing that it was empty. A couple of angels in there. Whoa. Must have blown her away. Kind of backed her off, and wouldn't you if you saw all that going on and Jesus wasn't there as you expected him to be, and you saw also that the heavy stone had been rolled away? She was kind of freaked out, so she kind of backed off and turned around, and there she saw this man standing there who she did not recognize. Why? Because he was the resurrected Christ, the resurrected Jesus. And she did not recognize him until he spoke to her. That happens quite a lot in the post-resurrection gospel, where Jesus speaks to people and all of a sudden their eyes are opened and they see who it is. And of course she says, "Rabboni," Jesus, my Lord. And then something very interesting happens. She had hugged Jesus many times before, But this time she goes to touch him and hug him, and he says, no, don't touch me. Not in rebuking her, but letting her know that he was now the resurrected Jesus, which was different than the incarnate Jesus. Before the resurrected Jesus existed, if you had to experience the miraculous touch of Jesus in any fashion and experience it personally, you had to be within some proximity of his physical presence. Isn't that right? Pretty much. But now, Jesus is telling this beautiful girl, this beautiful woman, you're no longer going to have to be in close proximity with me, because I, the resurrected Jesus, am going to be with you for the rest of your life. I'm going to be by your side in a way that I was not able to be before when I was the incarnate Jesus. You see the beauty of that? The transition? And so now the resurrected Jesus was saying to Mary and all others, from now on, I am going to be by your side. I will never abandon you, forsake you, or play games with you. I'm going to be there for you every minute of every day, and if you seek me, I'll be there. I'm even going to be with people who don't want me there. Okay? But that's the power of the resurrected Jesus. That's a whole different ballgame than the incarnate Jesus. We now, as a result of the resurrection, can say, Jesus is my friend, isn't that right? He walks with me, he talks with me, he stands by my side, we're walking through the garden together, isn't that right? I mean, you wouldn't be able to do that because if he hadn't resurrected. And so now we can actually say, I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. It's a new beginning, it's a new way of living. He's always there. He's never going to abandon me, forsake me, or play games with me. And I'll tell you, folks, there's no other person on the face of this earth that you can say that about. I don't care. We as human beings have a tendency to abandon, forsake, and play games, don't we? But not Jesus. He's always going to be straight with you. So the whole concept of this new beginning, this new experience of Jesus that Mary had and all the rest of the disciples is a fascinating one because it lets me know that even 2,000 years later, which is what we're experiencing now, you and I can experience the same new beginnings that Mary experienced, which this resurrected Jesus. And isn't it great to be able to have new beginnings with Christ? Think about what you have been through in your life. I know most of you, okay? The ups and the downs and the round and the rounds. And who's always been by your side? Who's always been there but Jesus? Always there creating new beginnings in his own beautiful way. Maybe not the exact way that you were expecting it to be, but Christ knows best what's best for you, and that's the beautiful thing. And so 12 years ago, I was in desperate need of a new beginning. You know the story. I mean, with all that transpired at St. Philip and all that goofy stuff going on. Man, I'll tell you, I was lost. I was desperate. And I knew that Christ was by my side no matter what I was going through, but it was a very tough time. And then all of a sudden, these new beginnings started to take place out of nowhere. Well, you do have to do some legwork yourself. You're not just going to sit there and, I often say, you do your best and God does the rest. I mean, you have to be part of the process, but the gathering was a new beginning. I don't know what I would have done without the gathering. And what's ironic about it all is that even before the gathering had its first Easter service 12 years ago, I was at Ray and Laura's house having one of their meals. I mean, they basically took the whole concept as a house church and we expanded it to the gathering. But they started it all, and I remember being at their house, and they were having a meal and doing this stuff, and they asked me, Pastor Dawson, what do you think? If we want to move ahead with all this, should we institutionalize, or should we just go out on our own? And that was a great question. And I said, well, you could hook up with some sort of other religious organization and become one of their churches. And then I said, or you could go out on your own and maybe you could call this new beginning the gathering. I said that in October of 2011. And then, of course, everything transpired at St. Philip, and I was without a church and on my own. And lo and behold, the gathering took place, and we had our first service on Easter 12 years ago. Well, think about that. Isn't that God at work in His own beautiful way? And we tried to institutionalize, isn't that right, with the NALC, and they didn't want me, but the gathering said, well, we'll keep Pastor Dawson. But I'm so glad we didn't get involved in any other religious organization, because, folks, the gathering is truly a unique, experimental, you might say, and I don't mean that to be like clunky, but I mean in all my 40 years of ministry, in all my education that I've been in seminaries, I have never seen anything
I already did it.
like the gathering. We put this little flyer out, I hope you can read it, but when Vicki and I went to some of these conferences out in Colorado, and we told them what the gathering was all about, they just stood there and looked at us kind of dumbfounded, because nothing has ever existed in my knowledge and experience like the gathering. Not trying to toot our horn, but it's truly, we're a gathering. We're not an institutional religious organization. We're a gathering of believers, and we've been able to maintain that for 12 years, which I find to be quite fascinating. Our goal was to never push the gathering. Our goal was to never make sure that the gathering continues forever. Give me any other religious organization where they can say that. You know, have you ever heard me say, and let's do this for the gathering? Have you ever heard me say that? In 12 years, and none of us, it's always, let's do this for the Lord, or let's do this for our ministry, let's do this as disciples. So, we are a unique oasis community of believers with no strings attached. No politics. From us coming up here to talk, I don't think we've once ever been political in any form or fashion. Now, some of the things you might have said outside on Facebook or whatever, I don't know. But from here, no political agenda. I mean, folks, you go to some places and that's all it is a political agenda. Okay? But we wanted to stay away from that. That's something you choose to do. No social agendas. We've never stood up here and said to you, now this is the way you've got to think about abortion, capital punishment, gun control, immigration, homosexuality, LGBTQ. We've never said that from here, have we? Because we believe that's between you and the Lord, and God is going to guide you to develop your own perspective. And I'm sure right here we've got different perspectives, and that's okay. What binds us together is the resurrected Jesus and our desire to be disciples for Christ in our own unique way. No social agendas. No money talk. Have I ever stood up here or anybody else said, we need more money? Or give us this, have we ever had a pledge drive? Have we? I mean, there's been no money talk. And yet we have survived for how many years? 12 years without ever talking one bit about you giving your money to the institution. That's pretty freaky when you think about it. And of course, no membership. We've never had a membership. You can come and go as you please. Pastor Dawson has never called you and said, where have you been? Or send you notes in the mail like I used to do at LCM. Okay, we're totally a unique organization without membership. You can go to another congregation and come here when you please, because we're non-competitive. That's what it says. You can go, oh, when I was at LCM and you went to somebody else's church, ruffled my feathers a little bit there, because that was all about the butts and bucks. God bless it in its own way, but non-competitive. No paid staff. Where are you going to run into a place that has no paid staff? No building program. So what you've got here is a truly unique organization that has blessed my life and blessed many other lives. I would venture to say that in the past 12 years, and I'm not sure if this is exact, the gathering has probably given away $100,000 in help. Close to probably to $100,000 that we've given away to help people that aren't even coming to the gathering, in all shapes and forms and sizes and all different types of situations. Think about that. And have you ever had to pay for anything that you did at the gathering? Remember all the things we used to do? How many restaurants did we go to as a young disciples, Quinn?
Almost every single place in Lombard Villa Park. So at least one.
And did the young disciples ever have to pay for a meal?
No.
No. And that was one of our statements, that nobody would have to pay for any books, any retreats, one time we took the youth group to Great America, and I think we spent about $1,000 for about 20 youth. I mean, but again, that was what the gathering is all about. So here I am, venturing forth into this beautiful spiritual experience, and it really impacted my life. What was nice about it, I'll be honest with you, is I didn't have to be a full-time pastor, okay? You know me, if I was at an institutional church, it was 24/7, you know me. I mean, that was, so what it allowed me to do was to experience other things that I would have never experienced before as new beginnings. Ray Mumpson back there gives me a call and says, you can come for work with me at Accurate Inspection, is that right, Ray? Yeah. And I've got this $3 million project with Mack Volvo inspecting trucks throughout the country, isn't that right? So here's your computer, here's a fax machine, and here's your phone. Have at it. I didn't even know how to use a computer. And lo and behold, with God's help and wisdom, I was able to do the job, and we made a pretty good profit, isn't that right? Yeah, amen. But I took that skill into working with Linda's company. Well, she doesn't own it, but she works at Class Mortgages. Worked with them for many years. All these things that I would never have been able to do as a full-time pastor, I was starting to experience. Started teaching school, I'm pretty much first grade to fifth grade. I stay out of junior highs. I've learned my lesson. I teach chess. If it wasn't for the gathering and spiritually helping me, I would have never been able to expand. And I do ministries through some of those things. Not always, but there's different ways to do some ministry through these things. Teach chess. I have my pastor on call, which is the hatched, matched, dispatched, business, marriages and funerals and baptisms. I worked at Jewel for 3 years, which got me back into my retail roots. You name it, I've done it. And then, of course, now I work for Windy City Limo as a greeter at the airport. I stand there with my tie on. I look like one of those Annie Fran people, with a nice tie, and I take them to their limo. But lo and behold, I've had a chance to do Mike Singletary, Cody, what's his name? Bellinger, I can never remember his last name. Talking to all these people. So it's been a wonderful experience. But throughout all these 12 years, the gathering has been my pulse beat to keep me spiritually alive and able to experience all these things. And I'm sure many of you have had that same experience from what the gathering has had to offer in its own unique way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me go.
Mike is one of our speakers, so he wants to say a few words.
I just want to let you guys know, I'm not making the baby cry, that's not my fault. I came here 10 years ago, and I'm going to be I told my wife I'd be quick, but I don't know if I can. And that was that day Vicki was talking. My dad had gotten cancer. And she told me, you need to go to the gathering. Never in my wildest dreams, or even a thought on that day, that I'd be standing up here doing sermons for the gathering with the help of Eric. I discovered when I did my first one I like this. I enjoy talking about Christ and what he did in our lives.
New beginning.
My life, Eric's life. Not only that, Eric gave Quinn and I the and Deborah, I don't see her here, but he gave us the opportunity to do what we wanted with the music. Which means if you're watching it online, great, we love you, but boy did you miss some fun. Phil Wickman, Doobie Brothers, REO Speedwagon,
Kansas.
Kansas, Jeff Green, Norman Greenbaum. You missed a lot of fun. But I was thinking, I told him, I didn't know what to say today. But the first thing I want to say is, I believe. So I want to hear everybody say, I believe. Come on.
I believe.
No, louder, let's go. I believe. I don't think I could have said that 10 years ago. And again, I do watch Worship Anew. And that's where I got that from. I says, why don't we just say that today? Think about it, he died for our sins. And I'm going to just real quick, and that is we've got Patrick Kane, GOAT, right? Right? Ryan Sandberg for the Cubs, Frank Thomas, Walter Payton, Bobby Hall, Michael Jordan. They're all GOATs, right? Because now the term GOAT is greatest of all time, which I always thought it meant you sucked at everything. But you know, or you're the Bill Buckner of the Boston Red Sox. Whoop! But that's the thing. Guess what? Jesus is the GOAT. He is the greatest of all time. Not one single human is, after 2,000 years, has more power than what Jesus has. And that's what he has.
Amen.
So he is the GOAT. Now, to get away from everything else, moving forward, what I call what's next. Okay. Currently, I talked to Laura. I'm sure she talked to Ray. I will be continuing the website. Okay. And we have basically, I have 4 years of what I call the greatest hits and sermons between Deborah, myself, Eric, and Quinn. And I'm not going to say I'm going to do it every week, but I would say every 1 to 2 weeks I'm going to be changing them out. And I don't know which one it's going to be. I'm just going to close my eyes and pick one. And that's how the website's going to continue to go. The Facebook page will remain the same. Nothing's going to happen there. Again, I will post these sermons on there if you're interested in watching. So that, for me, for the gathering, that's what's next, is we will continue to have a footprint online and on Facebook. Because that way we can communicate with more people. And it's kind of funny, you know, we got a pretty tight-knit group on the Facebook page. Every once in a while, we get a new friend. And I don't recognize the name. And it's not coming from the Chicago area. It's reaching out. Minneapolis, California, North Dakota. So we are reaching out a little bit, and that's one reason why I want to keep it going. Ray, I hope that's okay with you, because I know you guys started it, and I just want to keep it going. And I've offered Quinn, Deborah, Eric, and myself that if they ever want to do a sermon, they ever want to do like the gospel sermon, record it, send it to me, and I'll put it up.
Amen.
So we will continue with that. And if you have any questions, just email me or call me, and I will try to answer as much as I can. But I want to thank all of you for letting me do this for the last 10 years, especially you.
Yeah, thank you, brother.
No, I owe you all. Gathering saved my life. You can tell my wife did. My wife says I'm a happier person.
We enjoyed your sermons, they were great.
Thank you.
Can't do that.
Quinn, you want to stand up? Here's a story right here, Quinn. Here's a guy that wanted to be a police officer.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, talk about new
Nothing wrong with that.
beginnings, right? Yeah, but you know, I first experienced the gathering in kind of mid-high school, and like Pastor Dawson was saying, I had a million different things, including the Army, the police force, about what I had, you know, planned for my future. And it was, you know, at that time, you know, I look back now and it's like a totally different person, you know, and it's very fitting that we're talking about these new beginnings because, you know, it was something where, you know, I came into the gathering as this kind of strange, spazzy kid, got a million different, you know, questions about how the world worked, you know, God's plan for it, and, you know, where I fit in all of it. And, you know, what I got in return from the gathering is I got a spiritual family and so many wonderful opportunities and a place to grow and to learn. One of those great opportunities was being able to help organize and lead the youth group for so many years. And there's been just so many blessings that came out of that in my life personally. Like, for example, I got to watch one of my closest friends, Oscar, come to faith through the discussions we had in
Amen.
the youth group, and outside of it, you know, afterwards we'd be talking, and it's just such a blessing that, you know, my group of friends and believers can grow because of the gathering. And I mean, so many kids and youth have gone through the gathering, so many great events. Like we said, we've basically invaded so many different restaurants across these different towns over the years and done so many great events and things like that. But also in my personal life, there's been so much change because of the gathering. Like I said before, my job interests have changed because as my spiritual life developed and grew because of the spiritual family, and the opportunities like being able to speak and develop messages for services, it lit a fire in me that I didn't know that was there. This desire for ministry and this desire to grow even deeper in my faith and relationship with God. And so now, I'm in school for ministry, and hopefully, God will bring that to fruition in a beautiful place. And also even my wife and my marriage, like looking back at the person I was all those years ago to who I am today, I wouldn't have been in the spiritual place and my own personal development place to meet my wife, to connect with my wife in that way, because she was miles ahead of me as far as spiritual development goes. And so through the gathering and through the Lord and the Holy Spirit, He put me in the place where I needed to be for that. And so I'm eternally grateful for that.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mike and Quinn. Beautiful stuff. And what was nice is we rotated, like we did at the LCM, with different people coming in to speak. And so between Quinn and his way of doing his talks, and Mike, his way of doing talks, and Deborah, who can't be here today, she's not feeling well, and her and myself, we had a great diversity in approaching the gospel. And so again, that's part of the gathering's uniqueness in allowing people to speak. Any of you, Ray, you want to say a few words as one of the founders? Yeah? Yeah? Your lovely wife there. I know it's getting a little long here, folks, but hang with us. It's going to be our last service.
This is something that I was completely unprepared for. Okay? I did not know I would be asked this. But as I look around to all of you, I can see exactly what they're talking about in the way of spiritual growth. You all have come together and grown spiritually. Even though you might not have come here on a regular basis, okay, I think we gave you a good start and a good belief, and you moved upon that. And that is really a great thing to see. You just can't imagine how great that is. And I want to put in a plug for somebody, okay? Seeing that this is the last gathering together of this organization, Laura and I have found a great place that has a lot of the original intentions we had with the gathering, and a lot of them have held true for the last 12 years. And they seem to pick up where we want to go. And so I would really encourage you to come and continue on with church. They're not into all the pomp and circumstance. They've got a good attendance. What do you say about more than 100 a week?
Probably not that much,
And
maybe.
the pastor is great. He teaches Jesus every week. The whole service is about Jesus every week. That church is called Faith Community Church. The parking lot is right across the street from where we live, which makes it convenient for us.
That's a long drive.
The actual address is, if you go by GPS, is 190 Main Street in West Chicago. The pastor's name is Rhett Austin. So I think if you care to continue on with the great things that the gathering has done. You know, this is a good place to do it. And one thing that I noted about going into that church from the very beginning is not only are they very friendly and very helpful, but they are genuinely happy. And I've never been into a church where you can just see everybody happy. And they're happy about Jesus Christ,
Amen.
you know, and it's just a great thing. So, we would invite you there, you know, to continue on through your movement into Christ and what your beliefs are. And one of the things they stress is we don't get to heaven by doing deeds. You know, we get to heaven because Jesus forgave us. He died on that cross for us. That's what today is all about. It's the resurrection. He died on that cross, and it's because we believe that we do those good deeds. Not to go to heaven, but because we know we will go to heaven. And we will work and help for each other. So, we knew the gathering would have an end, we just didn't know when. And here it is. And it's hard to take, it's hard to comprehend. But here it is. When we started this organization, I had no idea